Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Britt and this is Coffee and Makeup. Today I am wearing my spooky lips because we are doing a video all about my paranormal romance journey. Paranormal romance for a lot of people is a genre that is a guilty literary pleasure. For me, it's more like my bread and butter. It's one of my favorite genres aside from epic fantasy and from mysteries. So I'm tired of feeling guilty about it, kind of over that. I'm just gonna own it. I love this genre and I'm excited to talk about it. So first I'm gonna start with a bit of my background in literature. When I was a little girl, I loved fantasy. I had a huge imagination, like all kids, I guess, and I really love to read books with any spooky haunted house or ghost on the cover. That's how I picked my chapter books when I was in elementary school. When I was in high school and college, I kind of went through a classics phase and just nonfiction books in general, so I wasn't that imaginative in my choice of reading, although I really enjoyed all the books that I read during that time. And then one day I was at my cousin's house and she loves the Carpathian Dark series by Feehan, and she also loves Kresley. These are like really real and true typical paranormal romances. So she lent me Dark Prince, the first Feehan Carpathian novel, and I read it and I was just hooked. This series, the first paranormal romance that I read, is about these vampire beings who are ancient old, and they are kind of like dying out because there's only one person in the entire world who could have kids with them or they could fall in love with, and they call this like a life mate. So you can already see this is like a really cheesy series. And of course in this book there's this human woman who has a really cool job. I think she's like she's psychic, and she has like a job investigating murders, and she is seen by this leader of this group of old ancient vampires. He falls in love with her. He realizes like this is the one, and then the whole rest of the book is just him pursuing her and saving her life in various ways, and in the end they end up together and happily ever after. I don't feel like that's a spoiler because this whole genre, or at least this whole series by Feehan, is just so repetitive. Every book ends this way. It's always a happy ending. It's always a romantic ending. So I read this book, and while it was cheesy, I freaking loved it, and I started reading the entire series, each one so predictable, and yet I just went through these books like they were candy. And I remember thinking like the only difference between these characters is the color of their hair. Like each book it was just this human who might have had like some type of abilities, but she's mostly helpless, and I mean she might be like have brown hair or blonde hair or red hair, and that's like the main differentiator besides for her name between her and any other female lead in any of the other books. So that was kind of funny. But of course they always had really flowy long hair and they're petite, and it's just so formulaic. But this is how I started falling in love with the genre. So once I got bored of that, I moved on to Kresley's series, the Immortals After Dark series, which is much the same. Lots of vampires, lots of strong, powerful, paranormal men, and these mostly human women who fall in love with them and they become like each other's soulmate or whatever. So while I was reading these two series, I kind of discovered some rules for paranormal romance. These are just the laws that govern the most typical paranormal romance books. Number one is that the female lead character, is always an orphan somehow. Either she lost her family in a tragic accident, most likely, or she has some type of magical ability, or she's a mythical race that they don't have parents, or for whatever reason her parents are always dead or gone. So that's one thing. She's totally without family. The female character has never had a passing thought about sex ever in her life, which is so silly because these are romance novels. So you'd think that you'd want this main character to be relatable to the reader, but yeah, she's, for whatever reason, never been interested in any man ever, and she closes her eyes in the shower so she doesn't even have to see her own boobs. Like, she is innocent completely from anything sexual. Until she meets this guy, of course. Speaking of the man, he is always a brooding, serious, dark figure, super chiseled, very handsome, but he's been through a lot and he's just given up on love for whatever reason. He's like, these dang women, I can't stand them, I'm never falling in love again. So then this man lays eyes on our innocent human female and he's like, oh my god, I'm in love, this is my future bride, I need to have her now. And she's like, I just met you. She's not into it. But then he saves her life like 5 or 6 times. And by the end of the book, she's like, all right, forever sounds good. Then they get married or they do some type of like ceremonious thing and they live happily ever after, and that's the end. And then at some point during the book, they introduce, for no reason, a brother or cousin of this ancient vampire werewolf man. And that's how you know what the next book's gonna be about, because it's just this incestual chain of like romances where it introduces the sexy brother, and then the next book is a sexy brother finding a girl, and then his friend is the protagonist of the next book, and so on and so forth. And it honestly gets a little incestuous. Especially there was one book in the Dark series where the vampire main character was going to be romantically involved with the daughter of the main character from the first book, and they were friends. It just gets weird, but that's how it works. It's always some relation that is introduced in the next book by way of some unnecessary cameo. And finally, the golden rule is that one book in the series must always take place in New Orleans, Louisiana, at least one book. So this genre has been the sole purpose for me wanting to go to New Orleans, because there's so many books that have taken place there. So at this point, I'm still reading Kresley Cole. She does have some stronger female characters. Some of her female characters have the paranormal powers versus all of the males being the more powerful ones, but that's rare. And she has this kind of cool sorority house of Valkyries, I guess I'll call it, where all these female warrior princesses live together, and I do like that. She has some quirky female characters, so I like that about her. But that was just kind of my gateway, those two authors, into more, I guess, what you would call urban fantasy, where it's not so much paranormal romance that the plot suffers and the character development suffers, because it's just strictly a romance. So after I finished up with those two authors, I kind of moved on to some of my favorite series, which I will talk about now. So my absolute favorite paranormal with elements of romance series is the Agents of Hell series by Jacqueline Carey. This is an amazing series. The main character, Daisy, is a half-human, half-demon girl who, well, I should say a young woman, who is quite powerful in her own right. She has multiple romantic interests, which is something that I definitely appreciate. It's much more realistic than some paranormal romance authors. So first we have the cop werewolf named Cody Fairfax. He is like this boy next door, lives in a cabin, probably smells like tanned leather, that kind of guy. So he's like the all-American love interest, but he's a werewolf too, so bonus. And then we also have this ancient mysterious ghoul who in this series is like an energy vampire, where he feeds on people's energy. He wears leather, he rides in a biker gang. His name is Stefan, so that's a little bit about him. I have to say I like Cody better. And also there's a lamia named Laureen, which if you don't know what a lamia is, it's a mythical monster really, with the torso and head of a beautiful woman and then the body of this gigantic snake. And she is heartless and cold, but she's really sexy, so she is an awesome love interest as well. Then the setting in this book in general is awesome. It takes place in this super charming small town. It has all of these minor characters that just steal your heart, and you really fall in love with this town and these characters. And ultimately the plot comes down to Daisy kind of figuring out how she can use her own powers for good or evil, and how she can save her small town from these various issues and conflicts that arise. One of the reviews that I read of this series was that it had kind of a Sookie Stackhouse vibe, and I disagree, only in the sense that I feel like the Sookie Stackhouse books, the Southern Vampire series, which inspired True Blood on HBO, has kind of a Agent of Hell vibe. I feel like Jacqueline Carey did it a little better, but I actually really love the Southern Vampire series as well. I'm in the middle of reading it. Right now I'm on the 4th book, I believe, which is called Dead to the World, and I have a lot of them right here. So that's the next one I want to talk about, and this is more of a fun, light read, I'd say. It's not as gripping and heartrending at times as the Agent of Hell series, but it is a really fun, still charming read. And I think the similarity that the reviewer was really pointing out was that they both take place in small towns, but I feel like with the Sookie Stackhouse novels, the town is a little more realistic, and so it's a little less charming and has some seedy characters as well. Like many women in these novels, Sookie is telepathic, so that's her special power, and she is a waitress in this small town where she meets a vampire one day. Vampires in this novel have just sort of come out of the closet. They've announced that they are real, they're walking among humans, and they've become recognized as kind of like citizens, albeit second-class citizens in some ways. So she meets this vampire named Bill, and she starts to have a relationship with him. She really likes him because she can't read his thoughts, and it's a welcome break because she gets tired of constantly hearing people's thoughts, especially when she's dating. She'll hear the man's thoughts about her, and sometimes it's not always pleasant. So that's why she really is drawn to Bill, and then they proceed to have all of these adventures and mishaps together. To me, Bill is not the most dreamy love interest. In fact, he's really not that attractive. He doesn't really get my heart racing in any way, but I can definitely see the draw for Sookie, so it still makes sense to me. I still enjoy reading their love story together. Then there's also a man that Sookie works with, her boss at her restaurant where she works, whose name is Sam, and he is a shapeshifter. He shifts into a dog form, and he's like a shorter redheaded guy and very sweet, always looking out for her, and I have to say I'm rooting for him. He's the underdog as far as romantic interests go, but I really like Sam, and I'm hoping maybe in this book or one of the future books that Charlaine Harris will dig into that relationship a little more, give them a chance to see if anything could work out between them. The last series I'm going to mention is the darkest of my 3 favorites. It is just a heavy, dark series, and it's kind of a mark of a really good series that it really took me through the emotional ringer, and I really liked the way the ending turned out, but it's one that will just grip you and will kind of drag you through the mud and all of these awful things that happen to the main character and just in this fictional world, but it's totally worth it, and I love all the characters in this series, and that is the Fever series by Karen Marie Moning. So the main character is Michaela Lane, who is exactly how she sounds. She is a teenager growing up in the southern US. She is blonde, tan, spoiled, rich, relatively, and she's just this happy-go-lucky girly girl. And everything kind of changes for her one day because her sister, who's studying abroad in Ireland, mysteriously is murdered, and the police in Ireland are not really being helpful or really looking into the murder in a way that she would like. So she picks up from her really happy, easygoing life, and she travels to Ireland to try to figure out who killed her sister and solve this murder. And as soon as she gets there, things just start to unravel, and it becomes this super dark, post-apocalyptic kind of thriller where danger is around every corner, people want her dead, and she has to wisen up. And while she's in Ireland, she teams up with this bookstore owner, and he's many other things, it turns out, but a bookstore owner is one of those things. His name is Jericho Barons, and this man is an insufferable jerk, but somehow when you're reading it, you end up really liking him. And I think partially it's because he is what Michaela needs at the time to kind of become her better self. She needs that like tough love person in her life that is going to push her to be stronger, more capable, and to use all of her gifts that she has to kind of save this world that's in danger. So maybe that's why his arrogance and just general assholery becomes tolerable. I don't know, but by the end you really do have like a place in your heart for Jericho Barons. And of course he's supposed to be super sexy, so that doesn't hurt at all. So in this first book, she's kind of annoying, and then by the end, she's gone through so much and she totally blossoms as a character. So I love that that Karen Marie Moning really develops her, and she changes so much, but she retains that essence of herself that makes her her, and so she's still this girly girl, but she's kicking ass at the same time, and it's really a cool evolution of this character. And just be prepared, because there was one plot twist in this book series that left me totally flabbergasted. I remember I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop reading this book, and I'm coming to the end of this one book in the series, and all of a sudden it ends on this cliffhanger, but not really. It just ends with this catastrophic change in the entire plot, where my mouth was just like hanging open, and I'm staring at the last sentence like and I don't even know, like at this time the next book was already out, but I don't even know how people would have felt if they were reading this book and the next book wasn't even out yet. It was awful, but you do get attached in this book, and it really does like jerk you around emotionally, which is, I mean, it's something that is the mark of a good book again. So anyhow, those are my 3 favorite paranormal romance series. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave any book suggestions below now that you kind of know what I like. And find me on Goodreads as well. I will link my Goodreads account below so we can read paranormal romance together. I will see you guys in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye!